it is easy in leadership and many roles, frankly, to let the transactional pieces dictate, right? There's a lot of stuff that needs to just get done. And so when you get busy, it's easy to let the little things go. It's easy to spend less time having human conversations, to tell a story, to go check in on somebody, to have a laugh at the water cooler. And yeah, I contend that those little things are actually big things. And you've heard this quote before, and it's near and dear to my heart, and that is culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it's true. And I think when I look back on why I think I was successful in the different positions I've had throughout my career, I think a constant piece would be culture has always been a bit of bedrock. And I think it really that boils down to genuine relationships. Like that is important. And you get good relationships in place, people feel trusted, supported. You can do good things together.
As an avid sports fan, it's really nice to watch someone's career from sort of the beginning to the end. So I can think of athletes like Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, even Wayne Gretzky. I'm showing my age, where I remember when they entered their profession and I saw them complete end their careers and, could track their trajectory. Then there's other times where, because of your age, you're seeing somebody finish their career and you maybe didn't see them beginning. People like Gordie Howe, there's others, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and others, where I saw the end of their career, I didn't see the start. Now, I give you that rather long introduction to say it's kind of nice when you can see that a little bit in education. And while I don't know, I didn't meet Sean when he was a teacher. I did see him grow from one district and now leading as superintendent in Abbotsford. I'm talking about Sean Nosek. And so Sean is a brand new superintendent. And so I was really excited to interview him about what that's like to be a brand new superintendent and how do you, set yourself up for potential success and take all those lessons of leadership that you've learned over the years and begin to apply them from, even a greater position of authority and influence. And so today's conversation is with my friend Sean, who I've known, and I've spent a lot of time with him outside of the classroom and know him as a friend, consider him a friend. And so I was privileged to interview Sean. I will say the audio is not as great as I'd like it to be. I think I fixed it up pretty well, but I wish it was a little bit better. But nonetheless, I think you're going to enjoy my conversation with Sean Nosek, superintendent of Abbotsford Schools in Abbotsford, British Columbia.
At what point, I guess, in your career did you think or ponder the idea of, maybe leading a school district might be kind of interesting work? Was that something that you thought about when your very first days teaching English, or is this something that evolved over time?
I love the question, Dean. 100% something that evolved over time. As I look back over my career, I was a 24-year-old teacher, and honestly, my focus was entirely on just trying to be a teacher. And I would have laughed at the idea that one day I would have, been a vice principal or a principal, let alone at a district level administrator. But at some point, I want to say maybe 5 years in, I had a few good tastes of what it was like to work on school culture. I had an opportunity to lead a few school-wide events. And I thought, this is pretty cool. And so I started spending a little more time with the vice principals and principals and asking them a bit about what their work was like. And then almost, I don't want to say by happenstance, but I started a master's degree and a vacancy for a vice principal job. And I was maybe down the road, but I got this tap while I was teaching summer school that said, you might want to think about it. And so I did. And long story short, I ended up getting this position. Really, and even at that point, the same thing sort of applied. I was just worried about trying to figure out what it meant to be a vice principal, deal now with the operations side, dealing with discipline, trying to balance the needs of students and staff and families. And, a few years in, you sort of start to think, well, maybe I'm ready for the next opportunity to be a principal. And so some vacancies that I happen to be a successful applicant. But again, even at this point, I would say no as specific aspiration to one day be a superintendent. But what I will say is, as I reflect back, when I was early in my career, I do remember being very, very impressed by one of the first superintendents I ever had for a whole bunch of reasons. One was that he was so visible. His name was Mike Sotheby, and this is in Maywood. He would make these rounds and pop in, and I think the first time I met him, he somehow knew my name. I don't know if we'd ever met, and you just felt like we'd already had a connection. And I remember thinking, we've got hundreds of employees, and somehow, walk in. This time I was in the gymnasium, and he knew what was going on, and that really stuck with me. And I thought, wow. And he really had an excellent reputation for a whole bunch of reasons. He was visionary, he was personable, visible, and so I do remember at that time thinking, just from a general, and yeah, a couple of good stints as a high school principal, and it was at that point, particularly after my time at Thomas Haney, this very innovative model, right, where I thought, I don't think I want to do a third school as a high school principal. I absolutely could feel like I would love another new challenge. And so then I began to think about district leadership opportunities. And even then, not with a specific sight line to try to be a superintendent, but sort of like the way all the other things unfolded. So I ended up working with Chris Kennedy, whom I know you know very well, in West Vancouver as a director of instruction. And then things just progressed, and had opportunity to be an assistant and then a deputy. And after some years of that, I remember a walk on the seawall with Superintendent Kennedy. He said, let me give you some career advice. And I said, okay, hey, you're ready. And there's going to be a couple vacancies coming up, but I really think you should look. And it was at that moment where I thought, he's right. And here I am today.
Well, I mean, you mentioned sort of watching other leaders, and I think one of the things that, and I've written about this a little bit on my blog, and I've talked about it, is because I have some of those similar experiences looking back at people that I admired, and whether it was admiring in terms of, I think I would like to be in that role, or just like really these are people that are showcasing leadership as something to aspire to. And I guess what I think about, Sean, is I worry about the role of leadership in general today. And I'm not just talking about school leaders. I'm thinking primarily about political leaders, and the way in which we as a society are very disparaging towards, the blog post I wrote is, who would want to be a leader? Because of the way in which we as a society pile on against leaders. And I think about it, man, that doesn't, I have friends who are in the political arena, and I just go you just have to, your skin has to be so thick. And what you're describing around those first sort of, and I had those same feelings of no. This is something that's admirable. That is, that will encourage other people to do that. And I think there's not to the same degree, but I think in education, there's a little bit of a challenge where there are probably teachers who have those leadership qualities, but look at maybe their principals, and not because their principals are not great at their job, but I think it's because the challenges of leadership can be such that they're having a difficult time even presenting leadership as something to aspire to. I'm not forming a very good question to you, but I'm sharing kind of a perception that I have around leadership. And I don't know if you've seen any of that kind of change over time in the way others, and again, I know you have served under great leaders, so it's maybe difficult, but I just wonder if that idea resonates with you in any way at all.
Oh, it really does, Dean, on so many levels. So I guess I would even back up that this is new to you, or for that matter, probably anyone in Canada. So, almost every sector is starving to get its employees. And so in education, we're not only now competing with other school districts, but we're actually competing with other sectors, which is to say we want people to want to be in this work in any capacity, across our system. Specifically to your point around leadership. Yeah, I think for sure that appears, I think, to people perhaps less, although it's seductive than it might have years ago for the reasons you described. I think there's a lot of pressures. I think there's even I'm going to theorize that sort of post COVID, not that we're necessarily post, but that people have some patience that's worn thin. They were, locked out of schools for a couple of years. And so, yeah, I think that teachers today are seeing vice principals and principals manage some of these challenging problems. I think they might say, look, even though I've got some really good skills, I'm not sure that's the work that I want to do.
Yeah.
Which I think then means for us, we know that we want to make sure that we're attracting, recruiting, we're treating great leaders. How do we make sure that we can make this look like and actually be enjoyable work? And so we're spending some
Right.
time, already with our leaders around how can we make sure that the reason you got into this, because we all got into it because there's some
Mhm.
quick to shine a light on those, and also how can we help lift some of those other things? So I know that maybe sounds a bit, naively optimistic, but I also think that's part of where leadership.
This episode is brought to you by Advanced Learning Partnerships, also known as ALP. We are a professional learning consulting group that serves communities across North America. We are partners, designers, and agents for change, and you can learn more about the work we do at alplearn.com. And now back to my interview with Sean Nosek.
When I look at British Columbia, and Sean, I am so admire so much the work of, the whole BC and Metro Van vibe. And there's just so much good stuff there that I think the rest of the world probably knows in some degree, but I think we continue to shine a light on. You guys are very fortunate, but you also have to be careful to maintain that. And that's not something that just happens by, accident. I mean, it is the people that are making that. And so how do you make sure that that legacy, I guess, continues? So I wonder specifically about, sort of what you can think about in terms of the trajectory of your leadership from those early days as assistant principal to where you are now. How do you think your leadership style has evolved, and maybe a way to share that is like, oh, I used to kind of do it this way or think that it was this way, but now I realize it's maybe different. So I don't know if you could track any of that kind of evolution of your leadership style.
Yeah, and I really like that question too. We'll see a couple things about that. So I think relating this question to your last question, I think a little bit, it is easy in leadership and many roles, frankly, to let the transactional pieces dictate, right? There's a lot of stuff that needs to just get done. And so when you get busy, it's easy to let the little things go. It's easy to spend less time having human conversations, to tell a story, to go check in on somebody, to have a laugh at the water cooler. And yeah, I contend that those little things are actually big things. And you've heard this quote before, and it's near and dear to my heart, and that is culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it's true. And I think when I look back on why I think I was successful in the different positions I've had throughout my career, I think a constant piece would be culture has always been a bit of bedrock. And I think that boils down to genuine relationships. Like that is important. And you get good relationships in place, people feel trusted, supported, you can do good things together. So I think that's a piece I've kept. I think where I have grown as a leader is, after a while, you sort of dealt with this body of stuff. You've had hard things happen, had traumatic things happen, had to deal with tricky disciplinary sort of cases. And so you do get, I think, kind of seasoned. And in a way that I feel I am calmer. I think I'm more patient. I think I listen better and with more intentionality than I might have as a, 30-year-old leader. And I think having a little bit of that calmer or reflective headspace actually allows me the ability to think better in that sort of, I'll call it like that strategic altitude, right? Because it's easy to get pulled down into the weeds, and there are lots of times that we absolutely need to. But leadership does require some altitude, and so the ability to find some calm and to be able to get perspective. And to your question, even around the importance of making sure that keep good leadership and British Columbia education at the forefront, it does require vision, and so I think that's a key part of the work.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, and I think about one of my previous episodes with former Director General of Lester V. Pearson, Michael Kakekli. He talked about how do leaders lend their calm, right? Like, so this is like not just about you and your disposition to try to, foster a culture that's not frantic, but also lend it to other people that they go, oh, I guess that gives me permission one of my favorite little stories I remember along that line is I was doing I don't even remember the context, but I was doing kind of a workshop with teachers, and we were talking about, how technology can be very frustrating when it doesn't work in the classroom, and how to handle that one. And I remember it was a middle school teacher that said, I actually love it when the technology doesn't work, because she said, it gives me an opportunity to demonstrate to my students how an adult can respond when things don't go well. Because so many of them have parents who are in a constant state of panic, and they just live in that kind of high tension environment. And so the opportunity to demonstrate that, I do the same thing when I'm in airports and flights are delayed. And as soon as you see that, everybody's like, what are we doing? And they're yelling at the gate agent. Like, there's something about that, because I'm an experienced traveler, that just makes me go, okay, I'm going to go all the other way and be super calm about this. Because number one, there's nothing I can do about this. And number two, if there is anybody that can help me, I can lend my calm to the gate agents who've been just hammered at with people's, upset and stress, that I can give them a little calm by saying, hey, thank you for doing this. I realize this is difficult. And, even if I'm requesting, hey, can you give me information, just to do it in a way like it, and it's amazing to watch that in that sort of context, just how much people okay, you're not here to yell at me. This is great. They just so appreciate it. So, but yeah, I think there's like, you can see this happening in so many ways. Now, you're taking over in a situation where this is not, a district where you're coming in to change and just like strip things out. You're following up a great legacy that Kevin Godden left, and Kevin is such a highly respected leader, leaves Abbotsford in a good place. At the same time, you are here to kind of maybe set some priorities and some goals. So what are your kind of key priorities as a new superintendent who wants to forge his own way, but at the same time acknowledge the good things that already exist and have existed in Abbotsford School District?
Yeah, you put that a really good way, Dean. So yeah, let me echo first of all, Kevin Godden's such a wonderful leader, and for so many years, and so I feel fortunate to a place that I think has such a good foundation in place. And so, part of my messaging out, to our district community has been that, yeah, I'm not here with a mandate that requires any kind of major course correct, but it is a chance for a refresh, and it's a chance for me to help amplify the great work that I see happening, and also to bring some fresh eyes and some new ideas, and to work collaboratively to just continue to make sure we're doing everything we can to provide a world-class education for the students and families of Abbotsford. Now, having said that, there were some interesting pieces for me coming right out of the gate. And just sort of coincidentally, and sometimes things go, there was a lot of stability for a long time. Kevin had spent some really good years here, and there's a lot of continuity. But not only did the superintendent part, but there were some other retirements and departures, which meant I needed to assemble the senior leadership. And so, relatively short time, have appointed a deputy superintendent. Nathan was the assistant superintendent here for many years, and so that's very helpful for me. And then brought in two assistant superintendents, one internal and one external, and then we have an associate superintendent of human resources that will start with us in October. And so, while challenging, also an exciting opportunity for a new superintendent, to be able to build some team. And I'm excited because it's a really nice blend of people that are inside the district that have the relationship history, but also some fresh eyes. And so it ends up that it also, I think, creates across the system a sense that there is a new chapter. And so I've tried to tackle head on the idea that I know this can be anxiety inducing, but we just flip that and look at what the opportunity is, to work collaboratively and write an exciting new chapter, and to know that we're not here to undo the great things that are happening. And so that's been kind of the work of the last couple of months.
Yeah. And again, I think, probably what puts you in a good state is like, I know enough of the school leaders that are quality people and probably are going to provide you a lot of support as well. And again, it's like, yeah, we don't hire somebody new to do exactly the same thing that we've done before, but yeah, so that there's a nice balance there, I think, that gives you time to enjoy and continue, but also to think about some new things to do. Now, again, as we mentioned before, most superintendents they don't have the entire summer off. Although let me just say, I think Chris Kennedy takes a lot of time off in the summer. I think I know that. We know that. But you, especially in your position, you just said like, yeah, you took a few long weekends, but you've been at this for a couple of months pretty well. Anything surprised you so far? And I know it's a little different context because like there's no kids, there's not actually teaching and learning that's happening. But as you've come to understand and sort of prepare for this and do this role, is there anything that surprised you so far?
Yeah, I would. And maybe this sounds funny to say. I think what surprised me was how quickly I actually felt comfortable in the role. So here I am, new people, new community, new commute. But, within even a few hours and a few days, I'm like, yeah, this is my work. We manage enrollment. We think about, what's happening in our different sites and schools and, where we're at with the budget. And so as new as everything was, it was also like, this is what I do. And I'm comfortable in this space. And the other is, and then I know I'm showing my bias here, but people in education tend to be pretty great people. They bond.
Yeah.
It's not about, building widgets or maximizing profit at its core. And whatever your role in the system, you've chosen to work for an organization that's trying to improve lives. And so that didn't necessarily surprised me. But once again, it was like, yeah, these are really good people. And it felt great to feel that so quickly.
Yeah, no, I'm biased the same way. And part of it is, with my work, I tend to work with people who are curious, who want to learn, who want to grow. And, there's just so many fantastic people. And I've said, I've said too, education for years has always looked to business as models to consider, that's fine. It's good. What I think is nobody's sort of cracked this nut. And I think there's a real opportunity is for business and people outside of education to look at education and look at the people that do this and say, what is it that we can learn from these people that can help us in business or, whether nonprofits or whatever other organization? Because to your point, there are just so many just brilliant people and kind people. And I know this may be for people that are listening to this in education, I'm sure they're echoing it, but it's when that's why it's a shock when you actually meet somebody in education that's like not of that makeup. It's like, oh, wow, this is odd because by far the people are just like wonderful, wonderful people because of, and I guess at the end of the day, if we're here to serve children, it's hard. Like it's hard to be a bad person when you genuinely want to serve young people. So
Well said. Yes.
anyway, well, to kind of wrap up here, and there's lots of good stuff too, but I know you've got other things to do in your day, but these are my quote unquote fun questions. And I know you're a big reader, you're a big, there's a lot of references that I know you've thrown around in the past that I go like, I don't think I understand that one. And by the way, I just want to ask, are those paintings behind you from Ken Williams? Ken Foster, sorry.
The one over here still
Yeah.
is, that's an alleyway from Vancouver that Ken did. And the other one
Okay.
was based on a photograph that I took on the
Oh.
yeah.
Cool. Anyways, there's a little side note. So if you're just listening to this, you don't know what we're talking about. But if you're watching it on YouTube, yeah. So this is a complete side thing. But Sean has a fascinating relationship with a local Vancouver artist named Ken Foster, and has done a lot of really interesting things with that. So if you want to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole, do a little bit of search for that, you can find some really cool stuff. All right. But what I wanted to ask you is, like, did you have anything that you've read over the summer, or more recently, or you've listened to, if that's your mode of consumption, that you'd like to share?
Yeah, and I'm gonna go. I've been spending so much time in thinking about the education space. So in some ways, I've consciously been trying to take a little departure. So I have been really leveraging my Audible, and I love what to read too, but with some of my drive time. And so I've been doing the heavy dive into biographies, and I seem to be drawn. It seems to these head artists. So the last one that I did was Important Light, the Canadiana coming out. So I've been spending some time, trying to not just think about education related matters, if you will, in that space. I also double down on CBC radio. Like I spend a lot of time listening there. I think we get some information. Those are a couple of my go-tos.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of little shows there, whether it's Age of Persuasion or just even Tom Powers is such a great interviewer that, it doesn't matter who he's interviewing. He's like, I kind of just like listening to him because he kind of is very good at his craft. What about any kind of, when you're out at the lake on those long weekends or anything, any kind of guilty pleasure binge series that you kind of enjoyed, maybe yourself or as a family? I don't know, anything on that front?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, binging is a thing that sometimes happens at the household. And not so long ago, stumbled upon Winning Time. This is the LA Lakers, the early 80s.
Yeah.
And it's great cast and gritty, and just the footage. It's cool.
I'm on it. And I do this. It's kind of I don't know if it's a bad habit, but like I'm always looking up, like at the same time I'm on Wikipedia, like, did that really happen? Did that game, like how close is this to actual reality? So I sort of take that. That's my deeper dive into that one. So yeah, I'm all caught up on the Winning Time. It's interesting. And I love the old camera thing that he uses front, like, and then sometimes you're like, wait, that almost looks like original, but it's kind of an interesting artistic flair, if you will. So yeah, that's a good one. Now, my last question, I don't know what perspective you'll take from it. You can do whatever you like, but I always ask people, like, what's a lesser known spot in your area? So I don't know if when you think of this, if you think of, the larger Metrovan, if you focus on Maple Ridge, if you think, I don't know, where you do whatever you like, but a person that's coming into the area, they're going to do their Google search and find their pretty obvious places to go, but what's a hidden gem? It could be a park, it could be a restaurant, it could be something to see in the area that you think, yeah, people should check this out. They might not know about it, but they should really check this out. What do you like?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm going to say Fraser Valley, Abbotsford is a jewel, absolutely. So I found a little place called Mill Lake. That's just kind of tucked away, but very natural. Lily pads, frogs. I've seen turtles. That's fantastic. The other thing I'm going to say, though, and you might remember this about me, Dean, is I am an espresso guy, which means whenever I, end up in a community that's new to me, whether I'm there for a quick weekend or a conference, or it's where I'm coming to work, I try to seek out the best espresso. And I'm sure there's lots more to that in Abbotsford, but there's a place I found called Aurora Roastery downtown on Montrose. They roast their and they import their own beans and really, really good. And I say that also because I have found over the span of my career that spending a little time in coffee shops is actually sometimes a really gateway to meeting, folks in the community and building some connections. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, that's awesome. So maybe it'll be your personal cheers, a place where everybody knows your name kind of thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Anyways, well, this is great, Sean. I so much appreciate your time, and I have obviously been connected with you for a long time, and I'm really excited about your new position, and I think Abbotsford is just very, very fortunate to have someone like you and the team you've assembled. So all the best in this year and in the future.
Really appreciate it, Dean. So great to speak to you today.
All right.